Good afternoon. Thank you for joining this month's installment of Creation Justice webinars. I am Brooks Berndt, the Environmental Justice Minister for the United Church of Christ. As always, I am joined by my esteemed co-host, the Reverend Michael Malcom, who is the torchbearer for justice in Birmingham, Alabama, where he is the Executive Director of Alabama Interfaith Power of Light and the People's Justice Council. Michael, it's so good to have you with me on this day and for this terrific program and lineup of speakers. I tell you, I woke up this morning in need of this webinar and the uplifting voices of our guests today. Almost immediately, I got sucked into reading news stories about herd immunity. And as I did so, I had two thoughts. First, it's no surprise that those who advocate for climate denial would be those who advocate for herd immunity. Not only is completely disregard for science, but more funnily, a complete disregard for basic morality and the untold suffering of many. But then my second thought was, hey, our Judeo-Christian tradition has something to say about flocks, herds, and shepherds. Not only does it say the Lord is my shepherd, not some king, not some emperor, not some president, but then it also goes on, our tradition goes on to say that not one sheep shall be put in danger, not one sheep shall be lost. And it's that moral clarity and that theological framing that we so desperately need today. And that's why this conversation is so important. Michael, what kind of theological framing would you give us as we get started today?
Yeah, so listen, I'm here to have a good time. These are some very special people, some people who I look up to, and I'm just excited about being here. Listen, there is a Bantu and Lambu proverb that says, "What one won't eat by itself, one will eat when mixed with other food." My grandmama, Nita B, used to make a dish called goulash. Goulash is this stew or soup that consists of meat, vegetables, and spices. Nita B made hers a little different because in her soup, she'd have everything that she just have left over in the refrigerator. She put all kinds of vegetables and meats in it. And now I apologize to my vegan and my vegetarian brothers and sisters and human beings out there, but just please stay with me. You'd see beef and you'd see chicken and you'd see pork. You'd see an assortment of vegetables. You'd even see beans and celery and carrots, tomatoes, and et cetera and et cetera. All of this deliciousness in this one pot. You could clearly tell the distinct differences between everything because nothing was blended. Each thing would have its own characteristic. It would have its own individual taste. And I realize that, describing what I've described, some people may get a little bit turned off by what I just described, but if you had just one spoonful of this deliciousness, you'd appreciate every other spoonful that you'd have until it was all gone. When she was all done with it, or when you were all done with eating it, you just experience this sudden sense of loss that you'd have because it was all gone in this bowl. And then for me, once I remembered it, I remembered that there was enough still on the stove and I could go back and get some more. But beloved, I believe that the world needs our goulash. It needs what we bring to the goulash. You are uniquely and wonderfully made. You have been blessed with talents and expertise. You have intellect. You have information. You are artists. You are visionaries, business leaders. Some of you are organizers. Some of you are faith leaders, trainers, consultants. You are many other parts. But what made Nita B's goulash so good was that she did not blend anything, and you could tell what everything was. It was all random and it stood on its own. She allowed for it all to just be what it was in this pot and bring what it had to the goulash. I believe that's what we are here today to do. In our distinct differences in our conversation and the audiences that we reach, we are here to bring what we have to the goulash. And as we even look back in on the reason in us being here and to get people out to vote, we are here to bring our various faith voices, our various introspections, our various intellects to this conversation and rally our people to vote. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing from these dynamic speakers.
All right, thank you, Michael. I know what I'm doing this evening for my kids' supper. I'm gonna go make some goulash. You got me fired up for goulash and for this panel. All right, let me now introduce our three speakers for today. Our first panelist has been tuned into the suffering of others through a career of service and moral leadership. Over the years, Karenna Gore has used her seminary training and her legal training and her skills as a communicator to advocate for women, families, and children facing the dire straits of gender violence, the dire straits of hunger, the dire straits of under-resourced childcare and education. And most recently, she has put her skills and talents into the founding of the Center for Earth Ethics at Union Theological Seminary in New York. The Center for Earth Ethics bridges the worlds of religion, academia, policy, and culture to discern and pursue the changes that are necessary to stop ecological destruction and create a society that values the long-term health of the whole. After Karenna Gore, we will then hear from the Reverend Lennox Yearwood, Jr., who is the founder and president of the Hip Hop Caucus, a national organization that astutely harnesses the power of culture and community organizing to bring about change. Reverend Yearwood is an obvious choice for any event dealing with social change and elections. His organization once set a world record for registering the most voters in one day, 32,000. From the aftermath of Katrina to the front lines of Standing Rock, Reverend Yearwood has been a leader, a coalition builder, a bridge maker, and a faithful fighter for justice. To get his insightful perspectives and inspirational vision on a regular basis, you can subscribe to his acclaimed podcast, Think 100%, where he challenges environmental injustices and shares just solutions to the climate crisis, including a transition to 100% renewable energy for all. Then our final speaker for today is the Reverend Gerald Durley. Reverend Durley is the former pastor of the historic Providence Missionary Baptist Church in Atlanta, where he served for nearly 25 years. His previous roles include executive director of a Head Start program that spanned 2 counties, director of the Health Promotion Resource Center at Morehouse School of Medicine. And in 2011, Reverend Durley was inducted into the International Civil Rights Walk of Fame for his contributions during the Civil Rights Movement. He now serves as the chair for the board of Interfaith Power and Light. With over 20,000 faith communities involved in its programs, it is the largest faith-based organization addressing the climate crisis in the United States. We are excited to have each and every one of these esteemed panelists, and we will now turn things over to you, Karenna, to get us started.
Thank you. Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Thank you so much, Reverend Berndt and Reverend Malcom. Really enjoyed your framing there, your words. My spirits are lifted already. And thank you to all the people and great organizations behind this platform and this gathering today, 20 days out from this election. We have 2 extraordinary speakers coming up, and I am truly honored to share this space with both Reverend Yearwood and Reverend Durley. I Also, I want to start by acknowledging what an extraordinary time we are in, not only with the election, but because we are in the middle of this global pandemic. And we want to send our love and sympathy and compassion to all those who are suffering and touched by the loss and the anxiety associated with this COVID pandemic. It has illustrated several things for us and revealed several things: how interconnected we really are, how futile and foolish it is to ignore basic science, how the legacy and ongoing hold of white supremacist thinking kills people in many ways, and also how social change is possible quickly if we just have the political will to make it happen. So we've also had several really big anniversaries this year that I want to mention. One is the centennial of women's suffrage. Women only got the right to vote in 1920, and if we think about how close that was, I knew my great-grandmother really well. She was born in 1899. The history is so close to us, and it reminds us how little we can take for granted, and how we can also remember how people won that change, and how others fiercely opposed it. And when they opposed it, they argued for a conservative approach. They argued for the law and order of the old ways that excluded and oppressed. So there are many women who struggled and fought for the right to vote, and some men along with them too, of course. I want to mention one. Among those champions and founding mothers was Ida B. Wells Berndt. Of course, she also fearlessly fought to expose and end lynching of Black people, and her work on that resonates loudly today. And obviously, she understood the way that mistaken thought systems entrench themselves, even after the change is made on paper. So think about what she wrote in 1895 in a publication titled A Red Record. She wrote, "The government which had made the Negro a citizen found itself unable to protect him. It gave him the right to vote, but denied him the protection which should have maintained that right." And so we are in that today. Voter suppression is real. Black people are the main targets, and it is happening now. As anyone who's seen those long lines, the images of people waiting in long lines, and I know we might hear more about this from people who know more about it than me. But I want to say that I read that this has also been documented and measured by academic institutions, this dynamic of voter suppression. In 2019, researchers from the University of California and other universities did a nationwide study using smartphone data, and they found residents of entirely Black neighborhoods waited 29% longer to vote, and they were 74% more likely to spend more than 30 minutes voting than white people. And there was another study from UPenn that found non-white voters are 7 times more likely than white voters to wait in line for more than an hour to vote. So we need to see clearly that we're in this. None of us can feel secure in democratic self-government, the whole point of this country in the first place, until everyone can vote and have their vote counted. In these next 20 days, let's work especially hard to expose and fight this voter suppression. And again, you will hear from 2 of the wisest and most experienced people about exactly how to do that and what is most important in that and other issues. The second anniversary that I want to mention is the 50th anniversary of the first Earth Day in 1970. I don't think I realized until this year how that day marks and proves how much it can really be used to mark and prove that civic engagement works, that activism works, that movements matter, that's directly connected to how laws and policies change. The consciousness that we share this planet, that it is a living system with limits, and that we as a human collective can do real and lasting damage to it, really rose to the surface around 1970 due to longstanding efforts of many people, from grassroots campaigners to groundbreaking scientists. And there were marches and rallies and letters and demands, and this all led to the creation of the EPA, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the National Environmental Policy Act, the Endangered Species Act. These have made a real difference in people's lives. In many ways, they are obviously inadequate still, and especially in the face of climate change, and especially in the face of what we call regulatory capture, when all these big interests have gone in to game the system, but they still have made a very big difference in people's lives. And now, those who are in power and seeking to hold on to power want to gut those laws, those very laws, and the whole EPA, and working hard to do it. And we can see, and they do it even as they boast that we have clean air and clean water now. And so that reminds me of the great dissent that the late great Justice Ginsburg wrote, a dissent in the Shelby versus Holder case about the Voting Rights Act. And she said, it is, to throw this out is like throwing out your umbrella in the middle of a rainstorm because you're not getting wet. And that's the same thing with gutting the EPA and the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act by pointing to the clean air and water. So we've got to elect leaders in this election cycle who will restore and enhance environmental protection, not throw it out. So of course, this election is about other issues too. There's healthcare, chief among them. We must elect those who carry out laws and policies that we need to take care of each other, especially those who have chronic and serious illness. And as part of that, let's not forget, we also need to address why so many people are sick in the first place in this country. And that has to do with what we were just talking about before, the inequities in the quality of air, water, shelter, and food. And it also has to do with the incredible stress and anxiety people feel who are born into such a situation in which they have to live in constant struggle in a country that is clearly in abundance. So this is a faith rally, and I want to close by saying a word about faith. So faith means different things to different people. For some, it is grounded in conventional religious institutions, teachings, and communities. For others, it relates to spirituality or moral principles without regard to those conventions. All are welcome here, as has been made clear. In this country, it is important to recognize the historical weight and the delicacy to the conversation around faith, because of religious freedom and the separation of church and state, which are essential founding principles, and also because the colonial concept of religion, the way that it was distorted by colonialism, did real violence to the dignity and spiritual sovereignty of many people, especially Native American peoples. As we know, freedom of religion was not extended to them, and so we must do more to learn from and honor those traditions. And by the way, I want to say on that, speaking of anniversaries, we are collectively working on new ones right now. We just had Indigenous Peoples Day. So many cities and states, so many cultures and schools and communities are making that shift to lift up Indigenous peoples on this day that was known as Columbus Day. So, and I read stories everywhere about how it was the Black Lives Matter movement that has catalyzed this awareness and this move for Indigenous rights. So in some ways, it really is a great time to be alive, and that work is really getting done. But separating church and state, back to what I was saying, does not mean you check your values at the door of the public square. And in fact, if we deny the way that values are rooted in faith traditions, there are sinister forces we have seen who will exploit and distort those traditions to stand for the exact opposite of what those values are. So one of the benefits of interfaith dialogue is that it can help distill the values we hold in common. It can unmask the bad theology that is implicit in some of the status quo, including the notion that our earth is simply a collection of objects to dominate and exploit, which of course is intertwined with white supremacist thinking and the idea that some people are expendable. So that the bad theology is really on display, and it's being used in this election cycle. So we all saw who held up the Bible for a photo op in front of a church while encouraging militarized police to assault peaceful citizens who were calling for racial justice. In this faith rally, we stand on the other side of that. We stand with these faith leaders, Reverend Durley, Reverend Yearwood, and many others from many different faiths and spiritual paths who are saying we are for justice and peace, grounded in our religious values that way. So I work at the Center for Earth Ethics, and I've studied some of those ways and seen some of those ways that ethics can distill and galvanize action. And I want to say that distill values and galvanize action. I want to say that ethics is most powerful in a time when both laws and social norms are out of step with a widespread sense of right and wrong. We've seen this throughout history, and we are in that time today. Let's not forget that most of the main drivers of the destruction ecologically that's happening are perfectly legal and in line with social norms. So we need to bring the change. And we can see that we are up against something so powerful, it will take an epic counterforce to overcome it. So let's remember, with faith and religion, we look critically within our traditions. We are tolerant of all other traditions. We welcome those of no faith as well. But we can also note that religion has played and can play a positive role in movements for social change. At its best, it can call people to a sense of belonging that is deeper than political or partisan affiliation. And there are examples from all over the world. Bishop Desmond Tutu said the scriptural teachings were key to ending apartheid in South Africa. Mahatma Gandhi has his notions of truth force and nonviolence helped bring down British imperial rule in India. And of course, in this country, was Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and other faith leaders like Reverend Durley. What an honor that you are with us here today and we're part of that movement, who rose to lead the civil rights movement, called for that radical revolution of values, packed houses of worship full of people ready to march, rally, advocate, vote, organize. So moral conviction can galvanize on a level that nothing else can. And we've got to use these 20 days in 2020 that way now. I know I'm not the only one who's had a broken heart over a close election result. We cannot let that happen. Let's do this with plenty of room to spare. Vote our values and vote in a way and support others voting in a way that will make future generations proud, so they can look back and say, this was the year that the United States of America turned a corner in the right direction to finally make it government for the people, by the people, of the people. So thank you so much. Happy to be with you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful articulation of the political, spiritual, and religious landscape before us, and reminding us that we are children of history. So thank you for that. We will now transition to the Reverend Lennox Yearwood Jr. Take it away, Reverend.
Thank you for having me. And it's just an honor to be here with my dear sister, Karenna Gore. Karenna, you sell yourself short. You forgot about the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and all the amazing work that we did to stop that. And for all the pipeline fighters out there, you are amazing. That won't happen. That water won't be polluted. That air won't be corrupted because of the work of those, and particularly the coalition that was built there. Black people and brown people and white people, all kind of people coming together saying that you will not build that pipeline against forces like Dominion Energy and all the folks who said it was a done deal. Well, it wasn't a done deal. It's not a done deal, and it won't be a deal. And so I thank you, Karenna, and all the folks who were able to stop the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. And I'm always glad to meet my brother, man, Bishop, Reverend Dr. Durley. Man, it's always my pleasure. He will tell you climate change is a civil rights issue. We have a right to clean air. We have a right to clean water. And he is my dear brother, not only in faith, but in this movement. I asked him one time to hang with us hip hoppers one time on a bus tour, and he was right there hanging with us. He ain't get tired. He ain't get weary. He took one shoe off one time and kept it moving, but he was right there all the time, just making it happen. Oh, man, I love that brother. I'm so excited to be with y'all today. I am so excited to be with you because I see something happening. My dear brother, Reverend Malcom, you know, Dr. King said it best in his letter to in the Birmingham jail. Society must protect the robbed and punish the robber. And I got a feeling as though punishment time is right around the corner. And so I'm excited about what's about to go down. Whoa, I'm excited about what's going down in 20 days. But, you know, as any good preacher, you know, Reverend Durley would say, I got to give, you know, I'm a hip hopper, but I got to give my good education that I received over there at Howard University School of Divinity. And let me just say that if you want to find a good person to do a job, always find a Howard graduate. Just saying, I want to keep it nonpartisan, but I just want to say, find you a good Howard graduate, you won't go wrong in that direction. But so I got to give my 3 points and my topic. I guess my topic is what was said earlier is Think 100. Think 100 is something that we do, Hip Hop Caucus. It's a media platform we do to help to broaden the movement. So you can go there and check out think100climate.com, and we have some documentaries and podcasts and stuff happening. But I want to use that as a framework for Think 100. because Think 100 has two frameworks. It has the framework of what we see in our scientific climate movement, which is we need to transition from fossil fuels to clean energy and do it in 100%. So we can make that happen by either, for many, 2030, or by at least 2050, to make sure we don't have the catastrophic results of the climate crisis. But the other side of this is what the young folk would say. We got to think 100, be positive. We got to think 100 and be encouraging. We got to think 100 and never give up hope. I want to come with that aspect, that dual coin. And so like any good preacher, and I'm from Louisiana, so like any good Southern preacher, you got to have 3 points. And so my first point I want to talk about is the past 100. Second point will be the present 100. And then the last point will be the first 100. So the past 100, the present 100, and the first 100. So in the past 100, we've seen something here. And that simply is this. Climate justice is racial justice. And racial justice is climate justice. Today would have been George Floyd's birthday. And I know that because today is my birthday. And we are about the same age. And so I'm with y'all on my birthday. So you know I'm fired up. You know I want to be here. But I come with a little bit of a dim on that, because me and George Floyd were about the same age. And being around the same age, I know I'm here speaking to you. And I know that he's not here. I have children and he has children. My children got up this morning and said, "Happy birthday, Daddy." His children can't say that. And so while we vote for anything, vote for think about how we saw how this system of oppression put their knee and had a public lynching for all of us to see. Now, I don't care if you have faith. I don't care if you don't have no faith. But if you're human, that was wrong. And you should be fired up to fix that, if nothing else. And so we also see that within this pandemic and with the police brutality and with poverty and pollution, we see in this moment this issue of environmental justice. And we see the connection there. And we see a connection that racial justice is climate justice. As Karenna mentioned of dates, this also, a few days ago, in that past 100, we had the anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, where I saw my family and friends, because I'm from Louisiana, drown in the richest country in the world. Now, this is it will kind of go up from here, but I got to state some real facts. Our climate movement missed the boat there, because while we are now discussing the movement for Black Lives 15 years later, no movement should have been first and foremost on the case like the climate movement, because we saw Black people and brown people and indigenous people left behind in the richest country in the world. We saw Black people and children and mothers carrying babies drowning in New Orleans. We saw that. And so we also saw that the inconvenient truth was not only the climate crisis, but the inconvenient truth was also white supremacy. We saw that, but our movement didn't get on the case. Now, I'm happy now to see what's going on. I'm happy to see Sierra Club denouncing the racist past. I'm happy to see NRDC and LCV coming on the case, but we missed the boat, and we can't miss the boat going forward, because we have to understand that this movement cannot be done if you do not connect the dots of racial justice with climate justice. So that's the past 100 days. In the past 100 days, we've learned so much about what we need to do. But now in the present 100 days, we have a charge like none other. We have to get out the vote. We have to protect the vote. We have to guard the vote between now and Inauguration Day. Please be clear what I'm saying. I didn't say Election Day. I said Inauguration Day, because we have forces in power who are going to fight up until January 20th, until they have to be taken out of that White House, no matter how it has to be. And we as people of faith who understand this have to be ready to console our people, be there for our people, give our folks wisdom from now through Inauguration Day. This battle will not end on the 3rd. Please understand, if you think that, you have been watching the wrong TV show. We have been watching a bad episode of The Apprentice, and we, people of faith, must now stand up and ensure that that gets canceled and we can move forward. And so we are now in this moment that we have to protect the most vulnerable. They are doing things to have lines in Georgia, lines in New York, lines in Virginia. They're even cutting the wire. They cut the wire yesterday. They are doing the most despicable things to hold on to their claim. And so we have to have our faith with walking shoes to make sure that we can be heard and seen in this moment. Now, that's the past 100 days. This is the present 100 days. Now, the last piece that gets excited is the first 100 days. I'm gonna tell you something, good days are coming. New things are on the horizon. There is a new awakening that's coming. But in that first 100 days, after that inauguration, on January 24th, that first Sunday after inauguration, we need to be in our churches, our mosques, wherever we need to be, and shouting like you were shouting for. If you ain't Pentecostal and you UCC, you're Pentecostal now. If you're Catholic and you ain't Pentecostal, you're Pentecostal now. Because we're going to shout on that first Sunday, come after inauguration. We've been through too much. We've been through a pandemic. We've been through poverty. We've been through some racism. We've been through too much. But we're going to shout. I don't care if you don't know how to shout. We have a how to shout education party, Reverend Durley, on the Wednesday to get ready for Sunday. But we're going to shout on that Sunday because we've been through too much. But humanity always rises. Organized people beats organized money every single time. And so we as a people are coming together to rise up. But in that first 100 days, every single time the policy of climate has been moved to the back burner. And so we have to ensure that we make sure that the issue of policy from the Department of Transportation, Department EPA, to HUD, to FERC, Federal Energy Reserve Commission, we have to ensure that everything that's been put forth in regards to climate has to be there. Those first 100 days leading up to May Day will be critical. It'll be the 51st anniversary of Earth Day. It'll be a critical time for us as we lead to that first May Day. Those 100 days will be important for us to make sure that we are on the case everywhere we can. And let me conclude with this, and these last bit. All of this that we're going through, this too shall pass. Oh, come on now. I need you to hear that again. This too shall pass. This what we're going through is preparing us. A setback is a setup for a comeback. We about to come back, y'all, to build this movement. Black, white, brown, red, male, female, straight, gay, theist, atheist, humanity is on the comeback. And we got 10 years and we gonna get it done. We got to get it done. All power to the people.
Reverend Yearwood, thank you so much. No one
Yes,
will ever doubt your no one will ever doubt your commitment. You're with us on your birthday, and you're so generous. You gave us all a present with those words. So thank you. We should be giving you the present, but you just gave us the present. So thank you so much for getting us fired up for the next 100 days. Thank you so much. And now we will turn to the Reverend Dr. Gerald Durley. Reverend Doctor, take it away.
Now that was a rally. That was a rally. I hear people talking all the time about we're going to a rally and people are sleeping in the back row. Thank you, my brother, for a rally. I came into the movement. I would see people that had been in it for 30 and 40 years, and they say, well, I guess we'll go clean up the lake today. Maybe we'll go talk about solar. Maybe, no, if this a rally is to get you who are listening to us fired up and ready to go. So, brother, I want to thank you. And I want to start off by saying shalom, assalamu alaikum, and peace, because where all the faiths are coming together. Brooks, let me thank you so much for the opportunity to come. I'm a little not disgusted with you nor angry with you, but there's something that bothers me a little bit about what you've done for this operation. First of all, you never should have put Reverend Karenna Gore in front of me. When she finished preaching, I had nothing left to say. And then you came with Fireball, and there was nothing left. So I thought the next time you would at least give me some deference. Several years ago, I was traveling with the Hip Hop Caucus and all of these young people with all of the great words and all of this, and they sang, and I'm traveling along with them, and we were at Howard University. You remember that night, Lennox, and all the kids, and they said, and now we're going to bring on the OG and the OG. So I kind of smiled and walked up to the stands, and I said, it's so glad to be here as an old gentleman. And everybody fell out laughing, and I wondered what they were laughing at. And one of the people who was with Reverend Lennox said, Doc, it's not old gentleman, it's old gangster. I said, oh no, but I've learned the difference between an old gangster and an old gentleman, and today is a very special day. So I thank you, and Michael, Malcolm, you've always been there. And on behalf of the Interfaith Power and Life, where we're grassroots in 40 states, 20,000 groups coming together. I never thought that I'd be sitting here now, 60 years after I got into the movement in 1960 with Dr. King, 60 years when I was 18 years old and met a 19-and-a-half-year-old young brother down in Nashville named John Lewis. And we were talking about then, and we met with an old man. He was 35 years old, and we wondered what could he teach us. That was the Reverend C.T. Vivian. We were there in Nashville, Tennessee, wondering what were the constitutional rights that we had. And we wondered, what is it that we could do? And we all had a spiritual foundation. When you looked at any movement throughout all time, you have whether it's overseas or whether it's in Europe or China, it's always the faith community, the moral and ethicist community that would come together. So when you look at those of us who were in the civil rights movement, there was Reverend Hosea Williams, Reverend Dr. King, Reverend Abernathy, Reverend Jesse Jackson, and we had a Reverend C.T. Vivian, Reverend James Orange. It was Reverend James Bevel. It was a bottom line. So I think today, when we're all tired and we're all weary and we want to quit, we want to give up, we want to turn around, we want to throw in the towel, it's good to go back to the old landmark, as a Southern Louisiana preacher would say. And a verse that comes to my mind is Jeremiah 31:25, where Jeremiah said this, the great prophet, when everything was coming in and they were being torn apart, he simply said this, I will refresh the weary and satisfy the faint. Sometimes you got to be refreshed. And sometimes you got to be satisfied. And sometimes you will get weary. Sometimes you will get tired. Sometimes you want to turn around. You think you're on an island by yourself. And in the Old Testament, he said, I will refresh the weary and satisfy the saint. But then there was a young boy coming along in the New Testament. He simply said this, be ye not weary in well-doing, for you will reap, you will prosper in due season. This is our due season for the movement. This is due season because we're not getting weary. We get weary, but we will be renewed and refreshed every time. And there's an old song that we used to sing, I'm on the battlefield. And I had to tell people, stop singing, I'm on the battlefield for the Lord. I know a lot of people on the battle, but those of you on this call, as we win this election, you're not on the battlefield, you're in the battle. It's more important to be in the battle than on the battlefield. I've met people all of my life who've been on the battlefield, on the fringes. But thank you for being in the battle here. This is a rally for the final home stretch, the final piece. And I keep hearing this term, we're fighting for the soul of America. Martin and John and all, we talked about the soul of America. And I wonder, what is a soul? I've been preaching for some time. I've been universities and other things. And what is that soul? The soul is an organism that gives life. That's the soul that gives life. And the soul gives energy, wisdom, direction, vision, purpose. But most of all, the soul gives hope. We're fighting for the soul of America, for the hope of America. We've come today to encourage each of you to vote for the real soul of America. And the soul of America right now is the environment. What we breathe, what we eat, what we say, it's the environment that keeps it all together. That's the soul of America. And when the soul dies, everything around it dies. So we're fighting for the soul of clean water, toxic-free air, because that's the essence of existence. I came along in the 1960s, the movement, and we fought for the soul of America. But the soul of America that we fought for then, I never thought I'd have to be fighting for the same soul now, coupled with the environment. The soul of America that we fought for was the right to vote. John Lewis gave his life for the right to vote. C.T. stood on the steps in Alabama for the right to vote. We marched for the right to vote. That was the soul of America. We fought for the rights of civil rights, human rights, transportation rights, housing rights. We fought for the rights of equal access to education. That was the soul of America that we fought for. We fought for women's rights. They were walking right along with us. Make no doubt about it. You might have seen Abernathy and Joe Lowry and Martin out there, but that was Coretta. That was Juanita. There was other, Octavia. Those women were in there in order for those people could go out and fight. But we were fighting for the right and the soul, so we understand equality. And then most of it, we were fighting for a just and a moral society. That was the soul of America that we fought for, the rights for all people to come together under the constitutional rights that had been afforded us. And now here we are, 2020, fighting for the soul of America once again, for the constitutional right. The constitutional right. It was my constitutional right when I got to Tennessee State in 1960 to ride in the front of the bus, to drink out of a water fountain that wasn't dirty. It was my constitutional right, but it was being denied. It is our constitutional right for clean water, clean air. That's a constitutional right that's being denied. So now we've got to fight for the soul of America, the environment. We've got to fight for the soul of America for a carbon-free society. That's the soul of America. We've got to fight for the soul of America to get toxic waste dumps out of communities of color. That's the soul of America. We've got to fight for the soul of America so that some person, I'm glad I cleaned my word up and said person, begins to drill in the northern part of the country again. That's the soul of America. We've got to fight for the soul of America to stop the fracking so that methane comes out that's even worse than carbon dioxide in the air. That's the soul of America when it comes to the fracking. We've got to fight for the soul of America to deny what fossil burning fuel is doing, and fight for the soul of America to take back the legislation around the automobile industry. That's the soul of America. The soul of America is the environment that holds it all together, and the survival. Yes, I'm tired. Yes, I'm weary. Yes, I'm worn out. And I thought that being tired and weary and worn out all this time, but I've got a new kind of tired now. I'm zoomed out. I'm webinared out. I think zoomed out and webinared out is more than all the others. And if I can stay in this battle for 60 years with the ups and the downs and the valleys and all of that, you can stand it for another 20 days to get out there and fight for the soul of America. Are you ready to throw in the towel? Say, well, I'm going to move to Iowa. I'm going to move to North Dakota. I'm going to move to South. Don't you know what's going on up there too? This is a worldwide epidemic that we're facing. It's a pandemic that's worse. We're walking around now with masks on because of one little coronavirus. Can you imagine when Mother Nature gets loose, how many masks we're going to have to wear? When you come home and you say, my home is not there because a hurricane took it away. And while you're standing out there, the earth starts shaking under your feet. And the earth is shaking and you look to the left and there's a wildfire coming your way or a flood coming your way. The IPCC says we got 10 to 12 years, and the hat that he wears says we got 10 years. And yet we're sitting down, here we are, fiddling. This is a time to stop fiddling because Rome is burning. This is our time. So during the civil rights movement, we had those. And I began to wonder when Brooks Caucus and Michael Caucus said, this is a rally. I like rallies. I'm ready to rally. I feel like rallying. I'm so excited now when I see young, black, and all kinds of people out in the street. I get excited. Now, I can get excited at my age. I'm almost 40 years old. So, you know, for me to get excited, some of you got to get excited. And as they're rallying, I said, well, what is a rally? And when I heard Reverend Lennox, he got into a rally. And I listened to Reverend Gore when she was just firing me up. And you got to fire up your neighborhood. That's a rally. What is a rally? And when you don't know what a rally is, you just do rally. Sometimes we just get in a rally, but we don't know what it is. So I had to go back and check. And I went back to my old Webster's dictionary. I didn't have my little I went to Webster's dictionary to get the real. A rally, a large gathering of people intended to arouse enthusiasm. Enthusiasm, the Greek word enthusiasm or entheos, being in God. And if you're in God, you're excited. And if you're excited, you're enthusiastic. The feat of mustering strength for a renewed focus, the renewing of a focus. And then I like the last definition. And you got to put it in context because now we can get a lot of fake news around what we say. So I'm putting it in context. A real rally is a call to arms when you're ready to go out there, when you're ready to fight. And what is that call to arms? Vote early. Be out there. We're breaking all records here in Atlanta today. Vote by mail, vote by box, vote by person, but be out there because vote matters. And one vote can make a difference. That's why we're here. We're not here to be some cheerleader. I learned a long time ago Then you say, oh man, you're a motivational speaker. No, inspirational speaker. No. I learned you can't motivate anybody to do anything. I used to try to motivate my son to pull up his pants. I can't motivate people to do anything. But what you and I can do is inspire a person so they'll motivate themselves. This call is to inspire us at this rally so that we'll be motivated enough to go out and vote, to stand in line and tell a senior that they can go to the line, give them a drink of water, give them a chair. Those are action plans that we can do. No more fear, but facts and faith. No more negative talk, but national talk. That's what our job is today. It's such an honor for me now to think back when I started at 18 years old. So you look at it now, my next birthday, I'll be 79 years old and I'm ready to run on. I don't feel no way tired. You should not, we should not, because this is our moment. This is our time. We got all of these groups, IPL, conservative this, we got the hip hop, we got CEE, we got all of these groups, and people talked about silos. But when all God's children get together, what a time, what a time. And that's where we are now. This is our moment. We're just connecting the dots now for the survival of the planet. We are in a moral, ethical, spiritual warfare. And never forget this. I close all of my meetings by saying this. We're on the winning team because thoughts become your words, and your words become your behavior, and your behavior become your habits, and your habits become your destiny. And our destiny is victory in another 20 days. So what I want us to do today as we rally your mind, rally your thoughts, rally your family, rally your neighborhood, rally your elected official, rally your mosque, rally your synagogue, rally your church, and rally yourself to get out and say when you get up tomorrow morning, I will not bow, I will not bend, I will not back up, nor will I break, because I'm going on to victory, and we're right there. This is not the finish line. This is the victory line and the beginning line, and we will be victorious. The climate is the connector of all of us across color, across line. So I say to all of us on this phone as we rally together, be excited, be enthusiastic. And if everything is coming your way, you're in the wrong lane. But know that this is our moment in time. And all of you all who are ready to get out here for the next 22 days and defeat this President Donald Frankenstein, I want you to really to just say, this is our time, this is our moment, and we will not turn around. This is it. Thank you for allowing me to stop by and just say a quick word.
Thank you, Reverend Durley. As you were talking, I realized I was experiencing a rare phenomenon during this pandemic. I wasn't feeling zoomed out, I was feeling zoomed in. I was hanging on to your every word as you rallied us, as you inspired us, as you just got us ready to get up and going. And so thank you so much, Reverend Durley, and thank you to all of our terrific speakers.
Let me say one thing.
Yes.
In Atlanta, we're filming something called The Walking Dead. I hate the show, I don't believe it. But in The Walking Dead, they say there are zombies walking around. And you know what I've become, Brooke and Michael and Karenna? And I have not become a zombie, I've become a zombie. And a zombie goes from one Zoom call to the next, you're just zooming. But in our Zoom state, let's make a difference.
Yes, thank you. You have inspired us to make a difference. I'm now going to invite everybody who is in our audience to post your question. If you click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, you can type in a question for any one of our panelists, and we will do our best to get to as many questions as possible. As we allow for people to type in some of those questions, I'll just throw out one for our panelists to get started. We're all pumped up now, ready to get out there and do something. And let's say, you know, as soon as we get off this Zoom call and we want to go do something, well, then the question is, out of the many different things that I can do, where should I be focusing my energies? We've heard about the rollback of the EPA. There's a lot of children whose lungs are at threat because of those EPA rollbacks. We've heard about fracking. We've heard about the need for thinking 100%. We've heard about the next 10 years being critical. Where should I be putting my energies right after I leave this call? Any one of you want to tackle that?
I would say the energy would be that me personally, I will be taking, we've got what we call the C.T. Vivian Leadership Institute, where we have 40 young boys that we're training, and we're going to put each one of them at a pole. And what they will do here in Georgia, if you're 65 and older, you can go to the front of the line. Their job will be to find those seniors who are there personally voting and taking them to the front of the line. So voting, getting people out to vote, encourage them to stay in the line, because the cause is bigger than your weariness and your tiredness. That's where I'll be placing all of my energies right now. Getting them out to vote, making sure that they stay. We met with the Secretary of State. We've opened up to put more machines, more voting places. And that's where I'll be putting my energy. And I think it's a good place just being there.
Thank you. Reverend Yearwood, you look like you're about to jump in. You have some thoughts?
Well, I just want to say, I think there are two parts to that question you're asking. I think the first part is that before you jump in, prepare yourself. You know, I used to be a Air Force chaplain, and I used to just enjoy actually how much work went into being deployed. And before you went anywhere, you had to go through a whole checklist, make sure you had all your things together. Did your house straight? Are your bills being done this way? You know, did your family know what's going on? And I think that in the movement today, there is a need that before you deploy, in essence, to get out there into the battlefield and into the work, you have to make sure you have yourself together. And I think this is what this spiritual conversation is really about. And I'm not asking for people to say, believe like I do in Christianity or and to be a Muslim or whatever you're in that aspect, or Jewish. But I'm saying that you have to have something to pull on besides yourself. And I've seen, particularly working with young people, that they get out there to do this work and they're pulling on themselves, and that leads to being depressed. That leads to being jaded. That leads to being cynical. And you can't do this kind of work if you're cynical or jaded or depressed. And so you have to make sure you're together first. And I mean to be all together before you get out there, but you gotta make sure you are, did you have the things that you need to have? And then when you get out there, you know, the best way is to do it in community. I think that too many of us try to look toward national, which is important, national organizations and see what they're doing on a larger scale. But the best thing you can do is in your community. Who's working in your community? If you're in the Bronx, if you're in Detroit, if you're in Birmingham, Alabama, who is working within your community, and how can you support within your community to make your community better? And again, this isn't about silos. So while democracy is important, we're dealing with things regarding issues of human rights and civil rights. We're dealing with issues regarding education, interpretation, healthcare. And so you want to figure out literally how your path can just make the people around you better. And I think if you approach that, you begin to see your gift. Your gift may be to be out front. We need you to grab the bullhorn. Or your gift may be to be in organizing and putting together things. Your gift may be in the litigation aspects. As I always say, demonstration without legislation or litigation leads to frustration. And so we need to figure out what all your gifts can be. And I think that in this moment, clearly there's going to be a lot of anxiety. I mean, that's the one thing about it, because, you know, you'll be watching, you know, either on your Instagram stories or on your TikTok, or if you're watching regular news, you know, you can see a lot of things that can get you off track. And so I would also recommend that, and this is for those of faith, you have to find time to turn off things that are coming into your spirit. Sometimes we have too many things that are coming to our spirit that aren't allowing us to just listen for a second to hear what is going on. And so you have to be able to turn things off. And if you don't have time, you're not communicating, if you're not exercising and using that time, or at night reading something positive, or, you know, just looking at the ancestors. For me, looking at a C.T. Vivian, or looking at, for me, like a Dr. Dorothy Height, who was my mentor, or looking at a John Lewis, who's also very close to me. If you're not looking at those and what they went through, and seeing how they did it as a roadmap, then you're not preparing yourself. So I think the point you're saying is that if you just get out there, and we see this a lot in our movement. For me, I work a lot with the Movement for Black Lives. I'm mostly in immigration, with the queer movement, with other movements. People just get out there. And that can actually cause problem, because when you just get out there, you also don't know who you're around. And we're also seeing the other side now is masking themselves. They're infiltrating movements because they're just getting out there too. And you don't know. And anybody can just say a few words and it sounds good, but you don't know who's who. But if you can make sure in yourself to make sure you're grounded, you are prepared, then you get out there amongst community in your local aspects, then when people come around you, you'll know who's who. And then you can build. I said before, organized people beats organized money every single time, but only if you organize. And if we do that, then we can win.
All right. Thank you, Reverend Yearwood. Karenna, do you have anything that you'd like to chime in on? Or should we, Michael, would you like to find a question for us to dive into?
Well, there was a question in the chat. I don't know how long of a dialogue it'll give, but someone asked, where do you get that, or where did you get that 10-year hat from?
Well, I got a great crew at the Hip Hop Caucus. As Reverend Durley said, you know, we have I'm no longer the ED. They have a great ED now. I've kind of aged out. They keep me around as president and founder, and they give me these hats. And so if you go to Hip Hop Caucus, I'm sure they can get one. But the thing there, and now, you know, they look out after me today, my birthday. They said, happy birthday, and also check your health care. So, you know, I don't mind that kind of stuff. You know, I am not Gen Z or a millennial. So I understand the checking on. So I'm okay with that. But our crew is brilliant. I do want to say that this is actually important though, because they are using culture. They're using different ways to talk about the message. And I think that our movement does need to use culture more. I think that sometimes we approach this is the climate crisis I'm talking about specifically now. We approach it specifically from a technology aspect, which is important because we need renewable, we need wind, we need solar, we need all that. That's critical. But I think that in only approaching from a technology aspect and not approaching it from a social, a culture, or even a political conversation, we miss the aspect. And so I think at Hip Hop Caucus, they are creating this message. And I would love for folks, we actually just did a documentary that we just completed. That's actually two documentaries. One documentary is in regards to climate and comedy, and it's called Ancient Mama's Heat Wave. And I think that documentary understands the usage of both anger and humor. Anger being something that will propel you and keep you being just, we got to fix this, but also humor being there to deal with our trauma so we can laugh, particularly in the Black and the brown and indigenous communities. They have learned how to use humor. It may look like they're laughing, but it's a humor it's a sustaining humor that's there to overcome the trials. And so we have a documentary called Ancient Mama's Heat Wave. We also have another documentary coming out dealing with the sea level rise in Norfolk, Virginia and Hampton Roads area. That one is beautiful because actually it's being done by both executive producer is actually Dream Hampton, who did Surviving R. Kelly, and along with Wanda Sykes. And I'm excited about that because that one that's coming out, and they just submitted to Sundance, but that one is talking about what happened in New Orleans, but also about what needs to be done moving forth in a similar area in the Hampton Roads area. And that actually speaks to this generation. One thing about what I've seen for young people is that they don't have the same institutions that I had growing up with faith, but they have a spirit that is very powerful. And I think people can misguide how they use their spirituality and their faith. And how they combine either from the different aspects of faith. But one thing I've definitely learned from them is that they may not be revolutionary in the same way that we had with a Kwame Ture, Sister Carmichael, but they are definitely solutionary. They will approach like this conversation here, and they will want a solution. So we're seeing with Sunrise Movement and 0 Hour Hip Hop Caucus, we're seeing them approaching it differently, and they're saying, okay, we need to change legislation, and they will approach it this way. We need to change policy, and they will approach it this way. And then guided in that, they're looking for spirituality. And that's, I think, something in this conversation here, that they may not wear their faith on their sleeves the same way, but they definitely wear it in their heart, for sure.
Thank you so much for those words. All good things must come to an end. Michael,
Let me
can
just,
you, yes.
I wanted to follow up on something that Lennox was just saying. The key word in all of this now is the renewal of hope. A lot of the young people, when we meet them here, they say, we want to do just like you all did in the movement in the 60s. I tell them they can't. It's a different kind of movement. It's a different time. It's a different perspective. We knew that if we marched, the consequences could have been jail or murder. They got to understand that there are consequences, so they've got to be what Lennox was talking about, organize, strategize, and then mobilize. So you've got to, don't just put 10,000 people on a corner because you got social media, but if you're gonna have a rally, who's gonna speak first? Who's gonna end the speech? What do you do after the speech? I ask a group, who do you want? What do you want? They say, we want somebody to hear us. I say, well, a dog will hear you. What do you want? Who do you want to hear you? How do you want to hold them accountable for what they've heard to come back? It's the organizational part, and therein lies the differences in terms of the consequences. Their consequences are much greater because it's environmental ending, it's life ending. Ours was, the kind of segregation that we face. So I think that the hope and understanding that they must be organized, and then the key word is the word sustainability. Stay in there for the long haul. This is not going to be overnight. I never thought I'd be fighting a voting rights bill again after 50 years, but that's what it's going to take. I believe that we're on the winning team.
Thank you. Michael, can you wrap up this present and put a bow on it as we bring it to a close?
Yeah, listen, thank you all so very much. What I've heard today was that we need to get out and we need to vote, but we not only need to get out and vote, but we also need to protect the vote. So if you can get your congregations involved, if you can get your organizations involved in being poll watchers and ensuring that those who are in the lines are comfortable and encouraging those who are sitting at home to get out and vote. We need every vote we can get. We are the ones that will reshape our future. We are the ones that will tell what can be done and what can't be done in our present. And we are the ones who ought to be learning from our past. Thank you again, Reverend Yearwood. Thank you again, Karenna. Thank you again, Dr. Durley, for your kind words and your inspirational words. I am inspired, and not only inspired, but I feel courage. I feel courage to get out here and make a difference. And I hope that you all feel the same. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Rally, rally!
Thank you so much to our speakers for getting us rallied and excited and energized. And to all of you joining us, we will send out an email with links to resources and more. We'll put this video up on YouTube so you can check it out and encourage your friends to check it out as well. So thanks to all of you, and we will be back next month with another webinar.